Hello and welcome to Bastionland Broadcasting, where we've spent enough time talking about other people's games the last few weeks. We've done read-throughs and they've been a lot of fun. But today we're going back to Mythic Bastionland, which is my upcoming game. And we're going back to something that we have done before, but I'll explain why we're doing it again. So we are going to be looking at how you would prepare for a game of Mythic Bastionland, which primarily involves preparing a hex map of your realm and filling it with stuff that the player knights are going to explore and discover throughout the game, because hex crawling is kind of the core behavior, the core activity, I guess, of Mythic Bastionland. Not so much the resource management, like hex crawl kind of thing, and like really getting into detail of like food and stuff like that, but more just you will be exploring a wide area rather than exploring a dungeon in general. I did do this a while ago. It was actually almost a year ago I did it for the first time, and then I did it again a number of months after that. But the system has changed enough now that I wanted to go back and redo it. I will probably do it again because the fact is I just really enjoy making these maps. They're a lot of fun to do. And I wanted to also use this as an excuse just to look at like what's changed, because the system now is kind of at a place where, well, let me get to it instead of just talking. So let's go to the start. So this is, as the document stands, this is what will become the quick start rules that will be available hopefully by the end of next week. That's the plan, and it's all looking promising so far to be ready to go at some point next week. And in the quick start rules, I'm basically going to have everything that you need. So all of the rules are going to be in there. I'll just have a limited number of knights and myths, and I won't have all of the Oddpocrypha section, which is like the sort of examples of play and things like that. So let's just get straight to it. So if we go to page 16, yeah, sorry if we're experiencing some kind of stuttering. I can see in the chat. My connection's looking all right, so hopefully it was just a temporary thing. So we are going to be mapping a realm, and we're just going to go through it one step at a time. And for this, I am using a piece of software called HexKit, which is I got it on itch.io. It's one of these lovely things where if you bought certain bundles on itch.io, and I don't buy loads of bundles, I've bought like a few of the really big ones that have happened over the years. It's one of those things where I just realised that I already owned this. So if you have bought quite a few itch bundles in the past, you may already have HexKit. And I'm not using the standard tile set. I'm using a couple of the tile sets that you have to buy separately. But I would really recommend HexKit. I think it's my favourite like hex mapping software to use for this at the minute. So the first rule is that these are just guidelines, not the rules. So when you're making your own hex map, if you want to go down the route of like going for like the geological accuracy and having mountain ranges dictate which side is going to be dry and which side is going to be wet and which side and where the rivers are going to go and stuff like that, or if you want to use like a historical map, by all means it can work with this game. This is just a guideline for like people who want to have a process to go through from start to finish that's pretty straightforward and gives you a map that works for the game. So the realm is mapped onto a hexagonal grid covering the loose rule of a seat of power. A 12 by 12 grid is typical. So that's what we've got. We've got a 12 by 12 grid here. Whether the realm is landlocked, coastal, or an island chain. So, yeah, I think we're going to go for like a coastal one. I think I did landlocked last time. Or we could just do islands. We'll see what we feel like doing. Typically, players get a copy of the map with holdings and general terrain marked. They cannot see myths, landmarks, and barriers. So that's how I've done it. So players get a copy of the map that has the lay of the land in general, and then they need to add their own notes for the extra stuff. The distance covered by each hexagon is a hex league, commonly called a hex. This distance represents a few things. It's the area that a hill fort can overlook. It's the area that guards can patrol in a day. And you can hike to a neighbouring hex and get back before dark. So that's the area that it covers. We're not worrying too much about how many miles is a hex. It's very much a term. It's very much a practical term. It depends on the terrain and it depends on things like that. So the map is very much an abstraction. And we're not going to worry too much about how many miles it represents. So again, consider the below a guideline rather than absolute ruling. I can probably delete this section because I've already got a section at the top. So, we're all learning here. Most hexes are wilderness and should be marked with a variety of terrain types. The tables on page XXX, which we'll get to, can help with this. As a general guide, create clusters of D12 hexes of the same terrain type. Now, I set some people off previously because I've done maps that have looked very patchwork before. And, well, like, each hex is a completely different type of terrain. And that was part of the idea of, like, having each hex be, like, quite a large area. But I have found it more effective now to have, like, clusters of the same terrain type. It does make things better. So it can feel like you're going through a forest for days, or you're going through hills for days, and then you hit, like, a change of terrain. So the tables that it's talking about are these tables here. And we're going to be using this in conjunction with hex maps terrain types here to try and get a sort of a variety of different terrain types in our realm. The way that we're going to do that is these tables are spark tables. If you're familiar with my other games that use spark tables before, it's just a 2-column table. We're going to roll 2 dice, in this case D12s. And we're going to combine the results into something. So the very first one here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit and then I'll zoom back out afterwards so we can see everything. We're going to, well, actually no, because we're basically going to be using this land table for a little while. I have actual physical dice just to make my life a bit easier. So you'll have to trust that I'm rolling accurately here. So we're going to roll 2d12 to get our terrain type, which is 4 and 9. So a sparse bog. What a lovely place to start. And we're going to roll another d12 to work out how many hexes of this are going to be in this cluster. So I've got a 10. So we need to put down 10 hexes of sparse bog. Now, what tile best represents that? I mean, this cattail marsh looks pretty good. There is some kind of... There's this muck one, which looks very sparse in terms of its vegetation. So let's do it. Let's put down 10 hexes of this. Now, I think what we'll do is, I'm thinking more like almost a horseshoe shape. So we'll have like a coastal area that's defined by like a large like gulf of ocean, I suppose. So in that case, maybe this marsh is like the top side of it. So we'll do 10 hexes of this marsh. So that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we'll just keep going. So our next one is going to be 11 and 6, which is a dank valley. And there's just one hex of this dank valley. Dank it's a word that I'm not sure I want in there. This secret veil looks pretty dank. That looks like a dank valley if ever I saw one. So maybe that's in here. And again, the good thing about HexKit is you can just sort of select the category and it will paint the area with everything from here. But you can go through and pick your own favorite one. So I think this ivy looks pretty good for our dank valley. Okay, let's keep going. So we've got a cluster of 6 hexes and it's 9 and 2. An overgrown heath. So I agonized. I'm like, do people care about what's the difference between a heath and hills and a meadow? But the thing is, this is a spark table. This is not that you do not need to worry about what is the rule implication of heath versus hills and meadow versus glades. This is just to get you to think of a description, really. So what did I say? This is an overgrown heath, did I say? Well, we've got another, we've got a few different tile sets we can use. I want something that's overgrown. Maybe this mixed forest would be a good one. and we had 6 hexes of this. So let's have this going up into the sort of the mainland here. Okay, and then we've got 5/5 for our next result. Sharp forest. So sharp forest makes me think of like an evergreen forest, coniferous forest, and we've got a cluster of 6 of these, and these can go down here. And then we're just going to keep doing this until we've got a full realm. But we will, of course, leave some space for this water in the middle. So now we've got a 12 hex block. And it's our result is 9 and 3. Overgrown crags. Okay. I know just the one to use here. So for overgrown crags, I do like these wise mountains. So we've got 12 hexes of these wild mountains. Maybe this is the range that comes all the way down here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we've got like a big mountain cluster coming down here. Now what I'm going to do to make our life easier a bit later is I'm going to get some ocean. I'm just going to fill in roughly where I want this like gulf to go. We want it to go right up to the marsh, I think. And we might put some islands in the middle. But I think this is kind of where we're going to want it to go. I don't know, it looks a little bit not quite right. Let's do that. That'll do. That's fine for now. So we're going to have some islands in the middle of here. I think we need to, yeah, let's break up this a bit. That looks a bit better. I'm just deleting land. We will put some islands in the middle as well. Okay, let's keep going. 10 and 12. A vivid plane, and we need 9 hexes of our vivid plane. So I'm thinking like, obviously planes like flat, but vivid suggests like a bright colour. Like bizarre fields, these are pretty good. So did I say 9 or 10? I think I said 10 of this. Maybe this goes across the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, 9 and 6. Overgrown valley. And then 7 hexes of this overgrown valley. So for overgrown valley, that makes me think of like a river valley, obviously. Going into like, there is like a jungle section. We could use jungle for this. Even if it's not literally jungle, just something that has that kind of feel to it. I keep forgetting the number. I need to stop turning the dice. So did we say 9 of this overgrown valley? Maybe that's what's below these mountains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 1 hex. Let's use an island for this. And our description is 12 and 7. A lush hills. So lush hills somewhere in here. Maybe this like savannah. Yeah. An island of like red kind of grassland in the middle of this this gulf. So now we have 7 hexes of 10 and 6. So 10 and 6 is a vivid valley. We could go mushrooms. Mushrooms are pretty vivid. And mushrooms will grow in like a damp kind of valley. Let's do it. So we've got 7 hexes of mushrooms. We could do this as like 2 islands up here. So let's do a 4 hex island. And then maybe 3 here. So maybe like, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about having the same terrain on split across the land, but it works for now. 11 and 1. And more dank marsh. We're getting a lot of dank, and we've got 9 hexes of dank marsh. This is a real moist realm, I will say. Let's use this swamp for that, the purple swamp. So 9 hexes of this purple swamp. Again, we'll stick to maybe, well, we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then maybe we'll have a swampy island coming off there. Okay, 5 and 12. Sharp plain. 7 hexes of sharp plain. Just, like, I'm thinking like cactuses is the first thing that comes to mind, but that might be a bit literal. There is like a Badlands. Okay, 7 of these Badlands. Maybe this is what separates our fungus up here. So we've got 6 and 7. So we're getting there. We're getting there. 5 hexes of 5 and 11. Sharp glades. Sharp glades. Let's. I mean, I see glade. I think of these Fey woods. Are any of these particularly sharp? It can be. It's just to get us again. It's just to get the sparks flowing, or like a dead forest. I know that's not quite what it described, but sharp glade. It could be like dead trees. Let's do it. So 5 hexes of dead trees. This is like a perfect 5 for our dead forest up here. Yeah, I am like accidentally putting like the dry stuff next to each other, so I can't resist trying to make it make sense. So we have 4 and 2. A sparse heath. So I'm thinking like sort of rolling, relatively dry hills for this. Yeah. 7 hexes of that we've got. Let's do that up here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've just got a few sections left here. Well, we've got 10 hexes of 5 and 4. Sharp peaks. Okay, well, that's going to be these mountains. Can we do 10 mountains? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then, do I put one out in the ocean? Yeah, it's slightly confusing as to whether this is an island. I don't love that there. You know what? Let's put it there. I know it doesn't not make sense. In fact, let's put it there. So we have a mountain in this kind of swampy island. And then we've only got 4 hexes left, so we'll just do one more roll, and whatever we get, we'll put in there. So 7 and 3. Still crags. So we've got some more mountains. We could do like dormant volcanoes. That could be cool. I don't know. Yeah, there's these like earth splinters up here. Let's do them. Okay, so that is our land. Okay, and I think it's got a good selection of like having different terrain, but it's got like clusters, so you feel a bit like you're traversing some kind of actual land that could exist. But we're not like slaves to geology. Okay, what's next? So we've done our wilderness. Some hexes have a barrier on one of their edges, typically representing a sudden altitude change or other impassable feature. Travel through a barrier is not possible by normal means, and if you try to travel through a barrier, it still takes you your phase of travel. Typically 1 in 6 hexes. So I guess if we've got 144 hexes, although we haven't got 144 land hexes, I reckon we've got about half of our hexes there are land. So I think 12 barriers is probably going to do it. And for our barriers, we're going to use... Well, we're going to go over to our barriers section. Barriers layer, sorry. And there is a very useful... These utilities here. We're going to use... I guess red is the universal sign of stop. No, let's use something a bit more natural. We'll use this brown one here. So we're going to pick 12 hexes where there's going to be barriers. Now you can do this randomly if you want to, but I like to sort of put them where it kind of makes sense. So I'm immediately thinking like all of these mountain areas up here, there's going to have some barriers in there. So let's go. Just throw some in, just to make life difficult. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe another couple down here. 5, 6. Maybe some more down here. 7, 8, 9, and then we'll have a few down here. 10, 11, and maybe in the Badlands there's a barrier as well. So this is part of the way that you get around, because at the moment there's no different movement speeds for terrain. It just costs like in one phase you can move to the next hex in general. But barriers are a way to kind of, it's not so much about, oh, you're slower when you're going through forest or you're slower when you're going through mountains. It's more that you need to know the way you're going. So you want to have directions to get the most efficient route to get to somewhere. Otherwise, you're going to hit these barriers if you're going through these areas. And, you know, a good guide might even be able to get you through the barrier. But more likely, they'll just tell you, you know, if you're trying to get up to here from here, they'll tell you sort of the clear path to take so that you're not bumping into these barriers and wasting time. So that's the barriers done. Most realms have a navigable river passing through and a few large lakes spanning whole or multiple hexes. Well, we don't really need to do any lakes because we're kind of in a... Let's imagine this is like a sea or a lake. It's not really the ocean. We could add a river. Let's do it. So we'll take a river. And we'll have one coming through this jungle maybe. That kind of makes sense. Or down through this marsh. I like the idea of having it come through the jungle. And like winding around the mountain. I'm going to agonize over finding like the perfect river shape. Let's not get too hung up on it. So there we go. So we have our river that kind of bends and goes around here. And we don't need to worry about having any lakes. Okay, so we've got barriers, we've got lakes, rivers, and now we're on to the holdings. So the holdings are where pretty much everyone in the realm lives within a holding. And there is the seat of power, which is where the seat of power is of the whole realm. And there are 3 other holdings, which are the seat of power is typically like a castle or something similar, and the 3 other holdings tend to be smaller, like fortresses, towers, walled towns, or temples. But a holding is like a walled holding, but it also represents like the sort of scattered farms and like maybe even villages that exist within the hex but outside of the walls. So we're going to put down 4 settlements in total. Okay, let's look. So I think for our seat of power, let's go kind of classic. Or have like a castle. And you kind of want to put it in the middle. It would be weird if like the seat of power was on this fungus island. It feels like the obvious thing is to have it be on this river. You know what, let's do it. So this castle is on, let's not have it there. That's a bit nicer. In fact, I think I just don't like that icon. There we go. We'll have that castle be on the kind of the fungus island. That is where the seat of power is. And then we just need a couple more. So maybe there's like this high rocky one is here on like a cliff face. And then we'll have something that's more like a town, perhaps, up in this like coniferous forest. And then our final holding I do like to have like a pyramid. I'm getting hung up on the details of which icon to choose, which isn't like super important. Let's have this domed one. Up in the bog, I guess. I guess that kind of makes sense. That feels about right for a where you would have your holdings. Okay, so that's our 3 holdings and our seat of power in the middle. What's next? We'll come back to the details of like filling in who exists at these holdings and what these holdings are. But for now, we're just putting stuff on the map. Okay, place the 6 myths far away from each other and in remote places, and we're going to number them 1 to 6. So again, we're not going to worry about what the myths are just yet. We're just going to have myths numbered 1 to 6. So for this, there's an Isles of Lore is the other hex tile set I like to use. And they've got this nice set of markers that you can use. So generally you want to scatter them around a bit and you want them to be relatively remote. But if you just put them in the corner, it gets a little bit predictable. So we will put the first one there. Second one, you don't want them to be too close to any towns. So second one up here. Third one up in these mountains would make sense. The fourth, maybe down in this swamp. The fifth, it would be good if it was on one of these islands. And the sixth one up in these mountains, behind a barrier, just as a real pain in the arse to get to. So these are the locations of our myths. And as the knights explore, they're going to encounter omens from these myths, typically from the nearest myth that they're to. So if they're exploring around this area, they're going to bump into lots of omens to do with this particular myth, number 1. And we'll, we will choose some myths afterwards. Landmarks. Now, this is something that's, I think this is new since last time we did a video on this. Landmarks are like smaller things that you might not even discover them. You might pass through a hex and not realize they're there, but you kind of have like a 50% chance of encountering them. And some of them are beneficial, some of them are not. There are 6 different types. Now, you can roll a d6 for each one, but as a general rule, it's good if you have 3 or 4 of each type. We're just going to do 3 of each to make our life easy. So we've got dwellings, sanctums, monuments, hazards, curses, and ruins. Dwellings are places where people live outside of the holdings. So people who live kind of a little bit outside of society, I suppose. But they're very useful to know about. So we're going to use these here. And for for dwellings, I'm going to use this heart symbol. And we're just going to kind of scatter them around. So where might these dwellings be? It'd be good if someone lived on this island here. So 1, someone's got to live at the mouth of this river. 2, and then 3, we've got a bit of a stretch here where it feels like it would make sense for someone to maybe live there. So that's holding. Dwellings, I keep calling them holdings. Dwellings. And dwellings are good because one of the ways you restore your vigor in the game is by receiving hospitality, and you need people to host you. So dwellings are like good places to do that without having to go all the way back to a holding. Sanctums are where seers live, and seers are incredibly useful because they know everything, but they're also weird and creepy, and they can be very annoying. So sanctums are their kind of hermit houses. So for the seer symbol, we're going to use this moon. There is a logic to this. And we're going to place these in places that feel like they would be nice mystical places for a seer to hang out. I think a seer would live on this mountain. And another one's got to live in like this bog, if that makes sense. And then thirdly, up in these mountains, just to be really awkward. Here, looking out to the sea. Okay, monuments. Now, monuments are sites of inspiration. So, again, you can, in this game, compared to other Into the Odd games, like Electric Bastionland, you lose your 3 ability scores a bit more easily. You can spend them to do cool things. So there's more a focus on spending them and restoring them. And one of the ways you can restore spirit is by consuming a sacrament, which I won't go into the whole system, but it's like a sacrament represents anything that you can kind of consume that's part of like a ritual or a performance or like a story even. Something that you can do as a bit of a ritual to restore the spirits of everyone involved. Monuments, if you go there, you can do this without having to actually have the sacrament. So they're useful places to restore your spirit. So monuments. We're going to use... I did see a suitable symbol. This diamond here, why not? So monuments can be probably in kind of obscure places. They've got a... I feel like these Badlands should have a monument. So 1. Maybe these woods. 2. And then the hills haven't got anything yet, so let's put a monument up there. 3. Okay, hazards. So these are just straight up bad. So hazards, you will come up against a specific problem, and you either have to find a way through it, or if you just push through, you can just pay vigor to just push through, or go back the way you came. So those with the barriers are kind of the resistance that you face in just kind of getting around the realm. And there's one more that we haven't done in that area. We're going to use this exclamation mark for hazards. So, I mean, this looks pretty hazardous. So we're going to go 1. You've got to have some hazards in the bog. 2, and you don't have to spread them out. You can put them like all next to each other, but we will spread it a little bit. 3, maybe this like the river is part of a hazard here. Curses. So curses are blights on the land that throw you off course. So they can be things like weird mists and like almost like haunting effects. If you travel in the next phase after encountering a curse, it counts as traveling blind, which means you might veer off course or go in a full circle. So again, another way to sort of have resistance. And the point of these is that I want to get the knights to... I want you to rely on local knowledge. So all of these holdings and dwellings and people that you bump into, the first question you should be asking is, I'm going this way. Do I need to know anything about what's around here? And they might tell you, oh yeah, you don't want to go near the ghost swamp because it'll chew you up and spit you out. So we're going to put down 3 of these. Definitely there. Definitely on that bog. Maybe in these mushrooms? No, it hit this one here as well. That's got a curse on it, obviously. So this island is, jam-packed full of stuff. And then our final landmark are ruins. So ruins are weird because they don't really do anything super useful. They're kind of just a little bit of flavor. Remnants of the past that echo the future. So they will each give a hint to a myth that's not currently in play. So in the book, there's going to be 72 myths, and you'll have 6 kind of in the realm. So what you do is you're going to roll one of the other myths that isn't being used, and you'll encounter a ruin that has something to do with that in it. So it could be seen as a bit of a red herring, but that's not really how I want it to feel. I want it to feel like it's just hinting at something in the wider world. So you might encounter something that's about, I don't know, the dragon or whatever. You might think, well, there's nothing happening with the dragon in this realm, but you encounter a ruin that tells you that somewhere in the past there was a dragon, and it's kind of a bit of a hint that maybe if I were running this game, I would include those myths in the next realm that the players go to. So 3 ruins, and for ruins we're going to use this little skull. So ruins, you can have ruins anywhere, can't you, surely? So 1, 2, 3. So I think that's all of the stuff that's in this realm. So as you can see, traveling between 2 locations, so let's say we're traveling between these 2 holdings, can be not terribly straightforward, because you're going to have to basically risk going through either you go around a barrier to avoid this, in which case you're going near the myth, or you're going through a curse and a hazard here, or you're finding a way to get on the water and take the long way round. But even then, this isn't on the water. You're going to have to cross the marsh here. So there's a lot of... I want players to feel like they're exploring a place that has little things to discover in every corner, but I don't want the GM to feel like they have to sit down and prep 144 hexes of stuff. I want to have the game do the work and sort of like spit out these little bits of interest that the players can encounter. Before I move on, I'm going to give these holdings their tags. So we'll have holding A as the seat of power, holding B, C, and holding D. Where are you? Holding D, down here in the Badlands. So there we go. That's our... Well, is that our map? Let's check. Here we go. And then adding details. So adding details. So you can use the prompts on page whatever to add details to significant locations and people in the realm. We're going to do that now. So let's get our map. This is our map, and I do always try and include as much stuff possible on the map, but with a realm there is so much stuff that I don't think it's possible. I have now conceded to the fact that I am going to be keeping my notes on a separate sheet and not just having notes on the map. So my separate sheet is here, and what we're going to do is we're going to come up with just some short descriptions of what's happening at each of these holdings, who holds it, what's their deal, and what does the holding look like. And then we're very quickly going to fill in each of the landmarks, and we'll have some myths as well, shall we? So should we do the myths first? I think we're going to do the myth. In fact, this is not going to work. We're going to need a 3-column layout for this. This is serious business. Okay. So myths. There are 72 myths in the game. Each one has 6 omens that will be encountered in this order as the myth unveils itself. And yeah, a myth will last a good amount of time, and there's 6 of them in play at any moment. So we're just gonna roll d6 and d12 to work out what our myths are for this realm. So number 1, 6 and 12, the very last myth that is obviously not yet written, but it is the island. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a second, show me this map, because myth 1 is in the middle of a dead forest, and you have just rolled the island. Well, there is a note about this very event here. Myths may appear at odds with their realm, such as the sea in the middle of a desert. Still, these myths must be brought to pass, so the realm shifts as needed. So you could take that to mean we're going to change that hex to be a lake that has an island in the middle. But I don't think we need to, because remember, these hexes are big. So the island doesn't need to be an island that covers a whole hex. It's just an island that exists somewhere within this hex. So it could be that it's a dead forest, and then all of a sudden the mist clears and there is this flat lake of like grey water, and the island is cropping out from the middle of the lake. And you can make it fit. So don't worry too much if it doesn't make sense. So myth number 2 is 3 and 4, which is the star, which I have written and is largely about things that fell from the sky. 6 and 6, the tree. 5 and 4 is the hound. 1 and 7 is the forest. So again, the forest is myth number 5, which is it's just on a random island of savannah. So the forest exists there, which it's strange, but you've got to find a way to make it work, because it's a weird dream-like mythy land, isn't it? And then we've got 4 and 11, which is the bat. One of the more recent ones that I was working on, actually. So the island, the star, the tree, the hound, the forest, the bat are our myths. Okay. So in fact, let's pull back the seat of power a bit and give it a bit of space. So in coming up with the holdings, I personally would do some prep ahead of time using these tables. That is kind of the intent of this whole spread of 18 spark tables, is that you can use it to spark ideas in prep, but you can also use it to just make up ideas on the fly. So let's, for the first one, for the seat of power, I think we're going to go through literally all 9 of these tables, which is something you can do, and they kind of they kind of work you through discovering what this holding is. In fact, before we do that, we need to know who holds this holding, right? So it's usually a knight that has the seat of power, and then holdings are usually a knight, but it can be just a commoner that has sort of reached a position of some influence. So our knight in the seat of power is number 4 and 12. No, sorry, 4 and 2, which gives us the gallows knight. So let's write that in. So this is held by the gallows knight. And what do we know about the gallows knight? 4 and 12. He's going to be quite far through. Wait. The Gallows Knight is something I am currently in the process of rewriting. Of all the knights I could have chosen, that is one that I do not want to show off just yet. We're going to go with the Pigeon Knight because this is one that I wrote relatively recently and I'm happy with. So, the humble know no home in place. For such wanderers, the horizon is their hearth. Well, not true because they own a castle now. So we can get some information about the Pigeon Knight, what equipment they have, their feat, their passion, and their memories of their lost home. So we can have all that stuff here. But this table here just lets us flesh them out a bit more as a person. So we're not too worried about their equipment because it's more about how are they as a ruler. But before we do that, we're going to work out what the holding itself is. So, we're going to work through every table on this page. The holding itself, as we approach it, what can we see? 5 and 9. Ornate beacons. So let's just write that down. So ornate beacons on the outside. The bailey is the area within the walls. What's there? 12 and 3. There is an immaculate library inside. And then the keep itself. So when you go into the keep to maybe meet the Pigeon Knight, what is the kind of throne room, if you like? How does that look? 6 and 8. The centerpiece is servants, always a good centerpiece, and the decoration is wreaths. Okay, so I'm getting a sense of a place. So let's jot that in so we've got the full picture here. So servants and wreaths. So I'm imagining like that the servants that are kind of tending to the Pigeon Knight, I just immediately think of them wearing like wreaths around their necks. And maybe they serve in this library as well. If it's immaculate, maybe there's just all the effort is going into keeping everything running smoothly. It's the Pigeon Knight, not the Gallows Knight. The ornate beacons. Maybe the beacons themselves are like sort of collared by like huge wreaths around kind of the base of these two towers that are kind of standing at the gate of the holding. So that's what we have for the holding itself. What about the Pigeon Knight though? What is their appearance and manner? So their appearance, 7. They have a warm appearance. But an intense manner. So perhaps they're like intensely warm, like too friendly, and again like too welcoming, and it's kind of weirdly at odds with like how these servants are all kind of tending to the Pigeon Knight, but they're like super warm and welcoming to you, and like getting any number of servants to come and tend to your needs. So the Pigeon Knight is warm and intense. What is their ambition? So what's their desire and what's the motive behind that desire? They desire mastery and their motive is defiance. So perhaps this ties into the library. So perhaps the Pigeon Knight is wanting kind of mastery of like understanding of the world. Maybe they've traveled a lot. That kind of fits the Pigeon Knight description in their knight entry. They want mastery of like knowledge, which I know knowledge is a separate thing here, but the point of spark tables is just to get the sparks going. It doesn't matter if you sort of veer off course. It's just to get you to a good answer that you're happy with. So I like the idea of them wanting to master knowledge out of defiance. Perhaps they had previously been denied this kind of thing. Perhaps they didn't want to be a knight. Perhaps they wanted to be like a scholar, and now they're kind of trying to go down that route instead of fighting. Relationship. We will come back to relationship because we're going to tie this into one of the other holdings. Courtly drama. What's happening in the court of the Pigeon Knight? 1 and 6. The theme is betrayal and the detail is disguise. Whew. Disguise. So I'm thinking, again, because we've got these servants that seem like super easy to disguise as. Perhaps somebody, perhaps like a spy from one of the other holdings, who they considered a friend, has like snuck in a spy disguised as one of these servants / like cultists, I guess, is the kind of vibe I'm getting. We could have that there's a woe that's been affecting this settlement recently. 4 and 2, a sudden famine. So yeah, that's not good. So a bad harvest this year. And quest is a bit of a stranger one. Perhaps this is something specific that the Pigeon Knight is talking about doing or wanting someone else to do. 11 and 6. Conceal gold. So, okay, so I'm imagining like gold that was like ill-gotten gains, and they want to conceal their true wealth. So perhaps the Pigeon Knight is like, as part of this whole warm thing and having these servants, they're like, they've got these servants, but they're kind of humble. And like they're trying to live this kind of, present this kind of monastic lifestyle, but they've actually got all these riches that they're keeping aside. So all this gives us like a starting point for how this Pigeon Knight would behave. So the main points that we had there were faking a monastic lifestyle in defiance of their life as a knight. And they're actually hoarding gold in secret. That's enough for now. And we should give the seat of power a name. What would be the name of this kind of library, monastery, castle that's held by the Pigeon Knight? Like Roost is just an obvious thing to have, but I like it. I like using just regular words instead of like coming up with a name like, oh, this one is called Everstarred or something. No, it's just we're just gonna use words. Okay, holding B. Let's do it. Who's holding B? So let's say holding B is one of these ones that's held by a commoner. So if we want a more rounded person immediately, each of these spreads that have knights and myths on also has a load of prompts at the bottom of the page. So we'll use those for this one. So I've rolled a 1 and a 12, which gives us the barbed knight and the worm. But then at the bottom here, we've got a person. And you can mix and match these from different pages, but we'll just use this set of prompts as is. So we have an argumentative sage. That could be someone who's the ruler, I guess. It's a weird one. But I think that works. Their name is Kaya. They have a mangled ear. And we have state, listening, and theme, smell. That's not filling me with inspiration. So we'll go back to these tables. I've lost it. Back to these tables, and this argumentative sage. What's their actual holding like? Let's roll through these. We won't go through the whole thing this time. We'll just go through the holding, the bailey, and the keep. 12 and 10. So a bright bridge, and you know what? It's kind of a boring name, but bright bridge is okay, and okay is good for now. That's their keep. No, sorry, that's their holding, the exterior. And then inside the bailey, We have 10 and 2. A solemn forge. Okay. Why is it solemn? That is the question. What about inside the keep of this argumentative sage? What's their sort of home like? 11 and 5. So we have a chandelier is the kind of centerpiece of their throne room, and 5 is flowers. So I'm imagining a chandelier decorated with flowers and like flowers all around this room. Where is this? This is holding B, isn't it? So this is the one that's over here in the forest and on the edge of the bog. So it's not a particularly nice area. It's got a curse and a ruin next to it, and the dead woods over here, and a bog here. So perhaps this holding is like slightly in decline, let's say, which is why the forge is so solemn. We'll put the flower chandelier in. The forge is solemn because like they can't get the staff, so it's almost like dormant, and we'll change that. We'll call it an outright dormant forge. So perhaps it used to be a more bustling sort of town with a bit of industry and like ironwork and stuff, but it's fallen as this kind of bog has like encroached over the land. So it's a shithole that nobody else wants. I like that it's a shithole that nobody else wants, and it's called Brightbridge. Now, what's the relationship between these two? What's the relationship between our argumentative sage? We had Kaya as their name. What's the relationship between Kaya and the Pigeon Knight? So we'll roll 2d12 for their relationship. So 11 and 4. Tumultuous spouse. Ah, okay. So perhaps this argumentative sage is the spouse to the Pigeon Knight, and she has been granted this holding that no one else wants because they have a tumultuous relationship. The Pigeon Knight wants some peace and quiet, so they have sent their spouse, who they can't stop arguing with, over to have this horrible holding. So spouse to Pigeon Knight. There we go. And then we'll smash through these two really quickly. We won't do it in the same amount of detail, but you can kind of see the process here. So holding C. Well, let's see we'll do another knight. So which knight has got it this time? 1 and 3. The Tawny Knight. And what is their deal? So the Tawny Knight's holding. The dominant feature. We have a mighty dome on the exterior, and the Bailey. There is a filthy marketplace inside. I like the sound of it. And then what about inside the actual keep of the Tawny Knight? We've got 4 and 4. So there's a pool with bones. A pool that's decorated with bones. This Tawny Knight, they've got a bone pool. I need to know a little bit more about them. What's their what are they like as a person, the Tawny Knight? 2 and 10. They are short but rash. And what's their relationship? I need to know how they fit in this realm. So their relationship to the Pigeon Knight. 8 and 1. Friendly kin. So like a sibling to the Pigeon Knight. And how about to Kaya, this sage? 1 and 7. An adoring rival. So they adore this argumentative sage, but how are they rivals? Let's look at the map. So this is holding C, which is over here. I guess they're rivals in the sense that I guess that maybe they do have like a disputed border here, and there's some dwelling here, so maybe they both lay claim to like whatever this holding is. But they're adoring rivals, like they really care for each other, but they sort of have to keep up a preface of like maintaining their claims over this horrible landscape that exists between them. And then the final final holding. Who rules it? We'll do one more like a commoner. 3 and 1. So we'll go to spread 3 and 1, which is the Story Knight and an intolerant herder. So we we have to have they're going to be intolerant regardless. A herder feels like a very kind of modest person, but perhaps they are more like a... Again, this is like a very, very rustic medieval world, but so there's not going to be like big cattle industry, but perhaps they do have like a significant farm, and this holding kind of grew up out of this farm, so it's kind of stayed within the family of these farmers. So we'll just put cow farmer, intolerant cow farmer, and what's their deal? Their name is Mabin. And their characteristic is they have sharp features. Okay, and what's this holding like? What's this place that sort of grew out of a farm into a holding? So we'll work our way through these 3. 2 and 2, a ruined tower. That's not a good start. 6 and 5, and there's a humble temple inside. So ruined tower, humble temple. Where's this one? D. This is the one that's down here. Okay, it kind of makes sense that this land is kind of dried up, that perhaps it used to be farm, but it's, yeah, it doesn't look like particularly good cow land now. They have a humble temple, and inside their centerpiece is musicians and scripture. What scripture would like a cow farmer turned Castellan have? Well, we'll work it out. So musicians and scripture. Maybe it's just like the written down, sheet music, and this Mabin, the intolerant cow farmer, has just loves music and just has people constantly around them bringing in new pieces of music. And we won't do all the relationships to everyone, but I think this Mabin must have a relationship to one of the knights. We'll do it to the Pigeon Knight because it's good to tie everything into the seat of power. So how do they fit in with the Pigeon Knight? We've got 4 and 10. An estranged peer. So they used to be peers. So perhaps the Pigeon Knight grew up on this farm. So former... I guess like employer is the wrong word. Pigeon Knight used to work on their farm. We'll work out the details of that, but the Pigeon Knight has some kind of background here with this person, that they used to be peers. Now the landmarks, it's good to have a little, for these I wouldn't really generate much more than just like literally a prompt, and you can just run with it at the table. But at the bottom of each spread, like I said, on this page... Oh, hang on. On the myth page, the 6 prompts at the bottom are just like the 6 different types of landmark. So if you need one, you can just flick to a random page and get an idea. So we'll go with that. So this dwelling... well, we have several dwellings. We're going to work sort of from the top down. So dwelling 1, which is this one up here, is a hidden cave. Sanctum 1. So where's the northernmost sanctum? That's this one here in the mud. So this seer, normally the seer is kind of linked to the nearest holding in that they will come along to interfere with their business and like advise. So I guess this seer is linked to this holding here, which is Brightbridge, the horrible place that no one wants to actually rule. So this seer here, we're going to get the specific sanctum itself first. The sanctum is a luminous hollow, but what seer actually lives there? And we'll use the seer that's on this page. We have the winged seer. A frail, broken body, tattered, useless wings, held aloft by white-masked acolytes. They see the potential failures of those who ask for advice, and has no faith in anybody to succeed at any task, and they want to bask in vicarious glory. So this is why seers are like a massive pain, because they know everything about all the myths, and they can just tell you like the solution if they were that way inclined. But they are normally not that way inclined. They are normally a massive pain. So this is the winged seer here in their luminous hollow. For the monument, we have the eternal tree. So where's this? So the northernmost monument, it was the diamond icon, is this. Well, it's either of these, but we'll take this one because the eternal tree being here makes a bit more sense. So the eternal tree is some kind of monument of like inspirational purpose. Hazards, we'll just do the northernmost one of each of these for the purposes of this. The northernmost hazard is this bit of bog here. So what did we get? Slippery rocks. So we can probably, again, it tends to just be like a bit of a prompt because we're limited in space down here. But perhaps it goes a bit further than that. Maybe like shifting rocks, like the ground itself in this part of the bog are like these big slabs of stone that are kind of moving. So if you try and just cross it normally, you will get kind of swept away or like pushed back to where you started. And you've got to work out a way past it, which typically you need to speak to a local, or you need to come up with a clever plan, or use one of your special nightly feats that you can perform, or ask a seer because they always know what to do. You've got some options there. Curses. What's the curse in this place? Haunting lights. And this one is here. So yeah, we've got haunting lights in the bog. That's classic. And finally, the ruin is the smashed glade, and we will tie that to the imp. So in Scaldry and Thrall we must endure, neath smoldern flame chained evermore. Writing these was simultaneously like the most fun, but also like the most cringeworthy thing I've done, because they kind of are deliberately like flowery and using made up words. So I really hope no one comes to me and says, excuse me, smoldern isn't actually a word, because that is kind of the point. So the imp is like a weird little guy that kind of wants to pull pranks, but they also like, they feed on frustration and pain. They can burn things down. So what was the actual? It was a smashed glade. Maybe it's a burnt glade instead. So it was burnt down by the imp. But the imp isn't around anymore. So it's just a little hint. Glade burned down by imp. And if you speak to a local person, this is a ruin. So this is something that happened a long time ago. They may know a little bit of the story of the imp, but they will speak of it as if it's a thing that happened a long time ago. So we would obviously then go through and complete this for those landmarks, and we could always go and flesh out these holdings and stuff a bit more. And the bit that I didn't talk about here is when you're in the wilderness. Okay, when we're in the wilderness, let's say our knights are setting up camp in this hex here. And there's nothing here. We've got a barrier, but other than that, all we know about it is it's this kind of Badlands tile. If you want to come up with a description on the fly of what this place actually looks like, that is what these nature tables are for. So we'll try that now. We'll do a quick speed run through. We'll try all of them except this Otherworld one because that's kind of a different thing. So we'll imagine the scene that we've camped overnight in this hex, and we know the landscape already. We know this was kind of like a kind of Badlands dry area, and these are just meant to give you like sparks of description, again, so that when the players ask like what's around here, you can kind of pull some little bits from here. So the sky, we could roll a 12 and a 10. It's an inky blue sky with sort of pillars of light coming up as the sun starts to rise. The water on the sea is 7 and 11. The sea is kind of, there's like a frosted mist over the top of the sea, and the occasional waves hit the cliffs as you look over them, and there's this spray of water over you. What's the weather like? 8 and 2. Solid wind. So yeah, as you're looking out on the cliffs, you can feel the wind kind of battering you, and it feels almost like the wind itself is like solid. And what about the plant life around here? There must be some, because even though we're in the Badlands, there's got to be something. We rolled a 1 and a 5, an aromatic canopy. So you managed to find a little bit of shade. So there are these bushes of kind of like rosemary and kind of other herbs that have sort of grown tall in a more shady part of the Badlands, and they've created this kind of canopy that you can camp under. Is there any fauna around here? There must be. We rolled a 5 and a 2. Mischievous songbirds. So as you're kind of preparing your morning breakfast after the camp, these little blue songbirds that come up and kind of eat the fruits off these shrubs that you're kind of camping under will come and like steal little bits of your food. And is there a feature here? There's no landmark as such, but is there a feature that would help us remember this? We rolled a 2 and 3. There is a colourful pit. So there's one of those pits where like, is it like bismuth? That like weird mineral that looks like it's like rainbow kind of coloured. There's this large kind of pit that has chunks of this weird kind of like vivid stone or kind of mineral jutting out of it. And perhaps there's even a wondrous element to this hex. We rolled a 12 and a 2. The theme is time and flame. So perhaps the campfire, as you kind of sit around the campfire, it feels like just a moment has passed before it's morning. And it's just like a weird, wondrous effect. And that's what you can do. You obviously wouldn't sit there and say to the players, right, sit there while I do this improv exercise of rolling through all these tables one after the other. But it's just a tool that you've got, so that you can occasionally just pick something out. And you don't even need to roll, you can just look. If you just find yourself needing a little bit extra description and you want to add in something about the sky, you can just look and choose a colour and the description and go with that. I really like using spark tables because that's just how I do it, but I do appreciate that it's not going to be something that everyone uses all of the time. So that is our realm, and these are our notes, and that in theory would be enough to start to run a game of Mythic Bastionland. And I know we breezed through that pretty quickly, but we've done all of that in like an hour. So I think if you gave me the rest of this hour to sit down and really hash it out, I would be able to be pretty confident that I've got a really good, solid realm that will last for a campaign. That's the idea, is you do this once at the start, and then players aren't like wandering to the edge of the realm and then leaving. The idea is that you are sticking around in this realm, potentially for a whole campaign, as you kind of grow and start to interact with the court and the politics of the area. But yeah, it should be pretty straightforward to make a realm, run the game, and yeah, it's a style of game that I always wanted to try and make a bit more friendly to not requiring tons of prep, or not requiring something like the Great Pendragon campaign where you've got this huge book of like a timeline. I wanted something that kind of taps into that style of play with a bit more of a procedural touch. So that's Mythic Bastionland. It will be launching on Kickstarter on November the 7th. The quick start rules should be out next week, which will have all of the stuff that I've shown today other than the knights and the myths. It will just have 12 of each of those, I think. As always, if you want to find out more about my stuff, you can go to bastionland.com. If you want to support the streams, you can go to patreon.com/bastionland. If you go to bastionland.com, there is the Discord server there if you want to come talk about Mythic Bastionland and find out more about it. And that's it for this week. There is not going to be a broadcast next week because I've got something on next Thursday. But hopefully the week after that, I will be back. And until then, it's goodbye for now. And I will leave you with this. On cold Miston hills, beast witsome and fell. In holdings and havens the vassals adwell. Seers know the all, the start and the end. Myths hushed aloud to which truth must upend. Aside vagabonds on snakeline trails, knights render these stories are wrenched from their veils. For the oath, for the glory, through sorrow and ache, the city, that quest to which no knight can make. Bastion will always be the only city that matters.